Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Sign for More Injury Funding, the podcast for all who want to learn about legal funding and its significance in the personal injury, workers' compensation, civil litigation, medical malpractice, dog bites, and many other types of law practice domains. I'm your host, Laura, founder and CEO of More Injury Funding, the legal funding counselors with passion for law, medicine, legal funding, and all of those suffering individuals. More Injury Funding is a sponsor, member, associate, board member, or business partner of this podcast, Georgia Trial Lawyers Association, Academy of Truck Accident Attorneys, Georgia Association for Women Lawyers or GAL, Sandy Springs Bar Association, Georgia Association of Paralegals, Atlanta Legal Aid Society, State Bar of Georgia, St. Andrew Rowing Club, and Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. In today's episode, they have a very special guest with me today, personal injury attorney Derek Rajavuori with DSR Law, LLC. Did I say that right?
You did, yes.
Excellent. And so Derek is based in Sandy Springs, Georgia. The issue of e-tailer liability for defective products sold by third-party vendors is a complex and multifaceted one that requires careful discussion of legal, ethical, and practical considerations. As the online retail landscape continues to evolve with time, it's likely that we will see further developments in this area as courts, regulators, and industry stakeholders seek to clarify and address this issue. We are talking here about Amazon, Walmart, eBay, Etsy, Best Buy, Target, Wayfair, and many, many others. At the end of our episode, I'll have a fun follow-up question for Derek, so stay tuned in. Welcome to Sign for More Injury Funding podcast, Derek.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us about your law firm, DSR Law, LLC, and what types of cases do you handle at your firm?
Okay. DSR, most of my career handled complex personal injury cases, wrongful deaths, product liability. I worked in the defense world for a long time. And I was also at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. So I do a lot of appellate work, product liability, catastrophic liability, industrial accidents, things like that. And then I have a separate niche that just kind of by hook or by crook I got into, and that's civil rights in 1983 litigation. So those are the areas that I focus on. And, I like to help people out. So I'll take a case here and there outside of that sphere if I think I can, be of service to the client.
That's wonderful. And how many years have you spent in defense?
I was in defense for about a little less than 5 years. And then I was at the Court of Appeals for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I also clerked for a trial judge. Mm-hmm. And then I've been doing plaintiff work.
So that's wonderful. It's great to have, to be able to incorporate all these, areas of expertise. And now you have your own on the plaintiff side. So today we'll be discussing product liability and consumer safety in e-commerce. You wrote an article in 2021 for the American Bar Association titled "A Link in the Chain, e-trailer liability for defective products sold by third-party vendors." Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So I'll get into the specifics more later on as we talk about this, but really what I wanted to do is explore how Amazon and its online business fits into the chain of distribution in the product liability context. And I was exploring, all kind of online retailers, but I really just focused on Amazon because they're the one that everybody knows. And in doing the research, it was always easy to find, Amazon-related authority. So most lawyers know this is something that's covered in a basic torts class in law school that, at least in some states these days, when somebody's injured by a product, they can sue anyone in the chain of distribution from the manufacturer of the product down to the seller, the store that they bought the product from. And this is really, this is a body of law that's kind of developed in the last 100 years or so. At first, it was sort of a judge-made concept. And then, as it developed, state legislatures got involved and passed statutes that govern product liability cases. And that's worked just fine. But, we live in a brave new world. A lot of people shop online. Most people shop online. Online commerce accounts for, at least according to some studies, more than 15% of all shopping in the United States. If that seems low, it's because, some categories are higher and some are lower. Some of them, don't make sense to be buying online. But it's also, increasing. It's forecasted that by 2027, 20% of commerce will happen on the internet. And so I wanted to explore how that fits into the chain of distribution in a product liability case. And that's really what the article was about.
Okay, very interesting. So I'm also guilty of online shopping. I tried recently, which I thought I'll never will do, but I bought some groceries, and I'm trying to remember. I think it was Target, if I'm not mistaken. So I bought some tomatoes, chicken, and milk, and something else, sour cream, whatever. It was like taco day. And I was surprised. It came in literally, they said, 40 minutes, or maybe it was 45 minutes. I paid a little fee, but I'm even shopping online, even for groceries going forward. So it's amazing.
Yes.
The world is definitely changing.
Yeah.
But Derek, how do the laws of private liability generally apply when somebody buys an item online, such as Amazon or Best Buy, or one of those platforms?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a simple answer and some complicated. The simple answer, sort of arises where the seller really just kind of is doing business online, but it's doing business just like any other retailer does. It takes title of the product. It's the owner of the product until somebody else buys it. It's stored by the company. Things like that. Amazon does it, Walmart does it, all kinds of different online retailers do it, Home Depot, you name it. In those cases, it just really depends on state law and how state law treats sellers in a product liability case. If state law allows somebody to sue a seller for an injury, then somebody who's injured can sue the online retailer. Where it becomes more complicated is with companies like Amazon, eBay, Walmart does this. There are other online retailers that do this, where what they're actually doing is connecting third-party sellers, some other company, and the ultimate purchaser of the product. So Amazon has a program called Fulfillment by Amazon, where it will take a quantity of somebody's product, some other seller. It could be any seller, from an electronic manufacturer to a dog food maker, or some obscure company that no one's ever heard of. And it takes a quantity of the product, it stores it in Amazon warehouses, kind of all over the country. It's part of how things can get to you so fast. That's why Amazon has this 2-day, 1-day shipping guarantee. It's got these warehouses everywhere. And then when somebody goes online and buys the product, they ship it out, they package it and ship it out from their own warehouse. And then Amazon also does, basically direct third-party selling, where a third party lists their item for sale on the Amazon website, but ships their product itself. And these third-party sales, especially Fulfillment by Amazon, make up, I think, more than 60% of Amazon sales. So Amazon never takes title to the product. It's never technically the owner. It's not technically the seller. And then, in some cases, it doesn't even touch the product. So that's really what my article ended up focusing on. And that's where things become more complicated. So that was a long-winded way of saying, you've got a situation where Amazon or Walmart or eBay is a little bit different from, the way that you think of a retailer in general. And, if you do the research, again, that sort of depends on state law and how state law treats sellers and really how it defines seller or retailer. The first question, just like with other retailers, is, does state law allow somebody to go after the seller for a product related injury? And then the question after that is, how do you define seller? And some states say the seller has to take title to the product. So Amazon just wouldn't be a seller in those states, no matter what. Some states, it's a little bit more of a public policy analysis. It's more amorphous, and it sort of depends on, whether you can consider Amazon an integral part in the chain of distribution. So there are cases kind of going both ways. There's a case called Bolger versus Amazon out of California. If you Google this, or if you search on Westlaw, this is the case that you're going to see. And in that case, it's a California Court of Appeals case. The court said that Amazon was an integral part of the chain of distribution and could be held liable in a product liability case. But then you've got other cases where, like I said, courts say, you've got to take title of the product, or you have cases where Amazon, is selling through that third party process where it doesn't actually touch the product. And the court says Amazon never even exercised control over this thing. We're not going to let it be, sued in a product liability case.
Very interesting. Very interesting. This is much of it is way beyond me, and I didn't even know that each state has different rules and regulations, but that totally makes sense because logistics are involved.
Yes,
Right,
yeah,
packaging, there's just so many moving parts involved, so I guess each state has different regulations. So what are the legal implications when a customer is harmed by a defective product purchased from a third-party vendor on their platform? Maybe Amazon, Best Buy, Target, or any other of these distributors.
yeah. And so, like you were saying, I mean, it really is. It's surprising, but it's true that state law really does, determine the answer to this question. In most, tort cases, or in most cases, there are differences in laws, and they can be somewhat outcome determinative. Somewhat, the thing that would answer whether somebody can recover or not, or how much they can recover. But this is especially true in the product liability context, and then especially true when you've got people being injured by third party products on Amazon that they bought through Amazon or some other website like Amazon. You've got states where the person couldn't recover at all from Amazon, and then states where they could. And the reason that's important is, in some instances, you're buying from Hewlett Packard, or Lenovo, or some company that makes bikes, or other products that could injure somebody. And they're in the United States. They're solvent. They're subject to jurisdiction. If you get a judgment against them, you can collect. So you don't really have a situation where a plaintiff might be able to, or might have to go without recovery, even if they're severely injured by a product that is clearly defective. Excuse me. In these cases, we're talking about products that really are. It's not like creative plaintiff lawyers, and I'm not, I do product liability. I'm not discounting any product claim, but some I think are more obvious than others. I mean, you have cases that's like, where you're making a failure to warrant argument, and you definitely need some advocacy to win. Right? I touched the moving saw, and you never warned me that I shouldn't do that, right? And then in other cases, and these are the cases that I'm focusing on, you have like a laptop battery that spontaneously explodes. So there's really no question that that's a defective product. And then, the unfair thing is, it's just, where does the person live? Where did this happen? If they lived in Georgia, they might not be able to sue anyone. I mean, we have, ways that we can get lawsuits against sellers, but, there are situations where somebody might have to go without a recovery. So those are the types of, things that are important to consider in a case where somebody's injured by a product they purchased, on Amazon or Walmart or eBay from a third-party vendor.
But it could be really tricky, don't you think, if, let's say, I ordered on Amazon pretty much on a daily basis. Fortunately, unfortunately, I love it. I don't know how I lived without Amazon a couple of years ago. But, I live in Georgia, state of Georgia, but all these products come from God knows where: Minnesota, New York, New Jersey, Texas, Florida. If I get injured, God forbid, with, I don't know, something. How would that work if the product came from another state?
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at. I mean, in all these cases where Amazon is, being sued, and it makes it up to a court of appeals or a Supreme Court or some court that's actually going to publish an opinion, there's no one else for the person to go after. They get injured, and the manufacturer is somebody that you've never even heard of. The third-party seller could be the manufacturer, or some other entity that you've never even heard of, and they're all in China. And there's no way to serve them. They're not in service of process. I mean, I shouldn't say there's no way, but it would be incredibly difficult. They're not subject to jurisdiction here in Georgia because they distributed their product to some other entity in China, and then it went through several different companies before it got to Georgia. And then even if you were to get a judgment against them, you'd have to go collect under Chinese law. So really, you have a situation where somebody could be hurt and they don't have any option other than to sue Amazon. And those are the situations that I really feel like I think should concern attorneys and people who advocate for consumers and people who have been injured by the negligence or the carelessness of other parties or companies, or people.
Mhm. How do you think their consumers view e-tailers' responsibility to ensure products sold on their website are safe?
Yeah, and that's why I think we should be talking about this, because I think most people assume that sellers will stand by their products. They assume that when they buy something, it's going to be safe. It's if they buy a laptop or a laptop battery, it's not going to they store it properly. They don't store it somewhere where it gets hot, or they don't get it wet. It's not going to explode. People have the right to assume that their products that they're buying are safe. And I don't know that people really think too much about the fact that when they're buying on Amazon, a lot of people don't even necessarily realize that they're buying from someone other than Amazon. And that if something bad happens, it might be, someone else's fault, technically. And that's one of the rationales of product liability law and why it developed the way that it did. And started to allow plaintiffs not only to sue the maker of a product, but anyone who played a role in getting the product from the maker, the manufacturer, all the way down to the ultimate, purchaser. So it's an important thing. It's an important consideration in the doctrine of product liability law. And I believe that most people assume that their products they're buying are safe, and assume that the e-tailer or the retailer that they buy it from will stand by their product if something bad happens. But that's not necessarily the case.
All right, Derek. So tell us, how do e-tailers navigate the balance between providing a platform for third-party vendors and ensuring consumers are safe from defective products?
So I think that they can do what any other retailer does. These are big companies. They have billions and billions of dollars. They've got resources, just like the consumer expectations that we just talked about. The seller's ability to sort of control the environment where things are sold and control what is sold is one of the rationales behind product liability. And again, we're talking about sellers who might really not do anything technically wrong. It's a packaged product that they get and they sell it out. The wrongdoing, it kind of comes in earlier than that, because the seller has bargaining power. Amazon's bigger than any company that sells on Amazon.com. They are an integral part of a lot of people's business. They have the ability to say, we're going to make sure that you're not selling dangerous products here. We can inspect them. We can get insurance to cover claims. And part of the cost of doing business sometimes is just to eat, certain expenses that come up when a product is lost, or when a product doesn't do what it's supposed to do, or when a product hurts someone. And those are the sorts of things that led to the creation of this product liability doctrine. And I think they apply just as strongly here in the context of e-tailer liability as they do in any other context. There are maybe some circumstances where Amazon has less of an ability to ensure the safety of certain products that aren't being shipped into an Amazon warehouse. But at the end of the day, Amazon, there are steps Amazon can implement to make sure that if it's a product that could be potentially dangerous, not a book or paper towels, but a tool or an electronic or something like that. It's possible that they can just say you can't sell these here. I'm not here to make business recommendations, but what I am here to say is that Amazon has the ability to get involved and ensure that products aren't unsafe, and then just to take responsibility if they are.
So it's interesting. You just reminded me of the case situation where I bought this inexpensive set of cords. I think they came from China through Amazon. So it took definitely more than 2 days. Probably took, I want to say, maybe 7 days to receive them. And as soon as I plugged into my new iPhone, so there was little like something light up. And so it damaged the internal apparatus of mine. So I can't charge anymore through the cord. I had to buy a separate, that base where you put the cell phone on the top. So I went back to iPhone, and they said, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. And your insurance had expired. So you would have to buy a new phone, or to repair it was more expensive than buying a new phone. So I'm stuck with what it is. But so that cord from China damaged my phone. So interesting. I wish I knew that. I wish I met you, months, like 6 months earlier.
And that's something that people should be aware of. You're getting what you pay for, and I mean, it isn't easy to see. I mean, if you look, you can tell when you buy something on Amazon. I shouldn't just pick on Amazon. I mean, Walmart does a lot of third-party selling. There's companies that everybody does third-party selling, like eBay. Etsy is Etsy is certainly an e-tailer. They have sort of a different group of products that they sell. But back to my original thought, I mean, if you're buying something, much cheaper, this is not blaming a consumer. I believe that if you are going to sell a product, the product should be safe. If you can't make it for a certain price and sell it safely, then it shouldn't be out, in commerce. And your phone was destroyed. Something worse certainly could happen there if you've got an electrical fire being sparked. So yeah, it's something people need to keep in mind when they're buying from these online retailers.
Eric, can you tell us, are there any meaningful legal differences between buying a product online from a company like Home Depot or Walmart and buying the same product in a physical store?
Okay, so if we're talking about situations where, it's Home Depot, regardless of whether you're buying it online or buying it in person, that is technically the seller, takes title to the product, is the owner, sells it to you. Yes, there are some meaningful legal differences. Also with Amazon, I mean, there aren't places where you can go buy Amazon in person, or Amazon products in person, but I don't know that most people realize this. If you buy something on Amazon or Home Depot or Walmart.com, there's going to be a little, like fine print thing that says by buying this, you're agreeing to Amazon's terms and conditions or conditions of use or Home Depot's terms and conditions. And if you click on that, it's a long, just like any other terms and conditions sheet that you would find, and it disclaims liability, it disclaims warranties, all those kinds of things. Now, you can't necessarily disclaim liability, certainly in every state, for product liability cases, or for product liability claims. But in Georgia, like I said, a seller who doesn't play any role in the manufacture or design warning for the product can't be sued in a product liability case. Now, what you can do if you are in privity with the seller, meaning you are the person who went and bought the product from Home Depot. Home Depot is a good example because there are some dangerous, inherently dangerous items you can buy at a hardware store. If you're the person who went and bought the product from Home Depot, or you live with that person, you are considered to be in privity with them, is what the requirement is called. And then you're also in privity with anyone up the chain of distribution, of the chain of distribution. So in Georgia, there's good support for bringing what's called the implied warranty of merchantability. And the warranty implied in every single sale by any merchant who deals regularly in whatever it is that's being sold. And in Georgia, there's good support for bringing a claim for that implied warranty against the seller in a personal injury case. So it's sort of I don't want to call it a loophole. I know the General Assembly isn't watching me, but I don't want them to correct this because, it's really one of the only options we have. And if you go and buy something from Home Depot in person, you're not signing anything. You're not, agreeing to any terms and conditions. There's a question about whether, when you buy it online, you really are, doing something that could effectively disclaim the implied warranty anyway, because it's buried in these terms of and conditions. But when you buy it in person, there's no question that you've agreed to some, disclaimers. And then if you buy it online, you have, and you might have foreclosed, your only opportunity to bring a claim against Home Depot as the seller in the state of Georgia. So there are some meaningful legal differences between going to the store and buying something in person and buying the same product from the same company on the internet.
Okay. Are there any legal changes that you think need to be made to address defective products sold through e-commerce?
Yeah, I think it's important that we just go ahead and confront this issue head on. I think state legislatures need to go ahead and get this on the floor and talk about how they will handle it. I think that there are ways that we can pass laws that make it predictable for anyone who's buying the product and the companies that are selling them. I mean, there's, I'm on the personal injury side now, but I think companies deserve to have some predictability. And it would help if they could, have that in this context. But I think even broader than that, I think these laws, like in Georgia, that prohibit claims against the seller in a product liability case need to be overhauled. And that's even outside of the context of e-tailer liability or e-tailer liability involving third-party vendors. We just have a situation where there's so many products that are made by foreign entities, companies overseas. And I'm not saying that's a problem or making any comment on that, but you do have situations where products that are inherently dangerous are making it out to the public, and then there isn't somebody who's readily there to be held responsible if somebody gets hurt. And I don't think that companies like Walmart, and Walmart's a great example. I mean, I just don't think that they're incentivized to put much time into looking at the products that they sell in their stores. Certain things they just, I don't know that they've done any testing to make sure it's safe. Not just Walmart. I mean, there's other companies that have, contracts with, suppliers overseas to make some sort of cheap product and just have it sold in their store and sold online for, just a couple bucks. And this kind of goes back to the whole, you get what you pay for. But at the same time, if you can't make a product for cheap and make it safe, then you shouldn't make it at all. And you have situations where it just, based on what's happened, I can't say this for certain, but based on what's happened, I just don't think there's really any meaningful oversight over, what is, how that product is made and what safety features it has.
This is such a deep ocean of issues. It's like it sounds to me like a can of worms. And
yes,
we'll need to cover many more topics, continuation of this episode in the future episodes, because it's just very super interesting.
And I'm long-winded when it comes to this stuff, and I'm happy to keep talking about it at another time.
Absolutely. So based on your experience and extensive research, do you know of any recent court cases or legal or other legal developments that have changed the landscape of e-tailer liability for defective products since you wrote your article in 2021?
So I haven't taken, the deep dive that I did when I wrote that article back then. I put a lot of research and time into that one. I wanted it. It was published in the ABA's tort trial and insurance magazine. And so I really wanted to get it published there. So I really put a ton of time into it. I do keep up with this stuff though. When we talked about this, I did, a little bit of combing through the case law. And, but, that being said, not as much as I would like to, but anyway, there were surprisingly few, big cases that have come out since, I did this research. And you got Bolger, Fox versus Amazon is another one. I've got Tennessee. There's a case out of Pennsylvania. I can't recall the name of right now, but it was in federal court, and then it went to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to answer a certified question, and then it went back to the federal court. There's been surprisingly few of those types of cases since 2021. But there have been a few things that I think are worth mentioning. And one, I found a case where the evidence indicated, or at least the allegations indicated, that Amazon actually did inspect the product several times. It was a camera, like a recording camera. And Amazon did some inspections to make sure it couldn't be hidden somewhere and used to, surreptitiously record someone. And so, I don't know if that's something that Amazon started doing more recently. I'm not saying they do it in every single case or trying to give Amazon too much credit, but at least, if that's true, there's some inspection going on before things are being sold. And this was on the fulfillment by Amazon program. So Amazon's going to take it into its warehouse and sell this camera. And then Amazon has also implemented a program where they will reimburse, essentially $1,000 for a defective or dangerous product without charging the seller, the third-party seller, anything. Now, $1,000 doesn't go very far in a product liability case, but there are circumstances where Amazon will step in and pay more. And then I think the most important thing that they're doing, or at least according to what they claim, is they're trying to work to offer cost-effective insurance options for third-party vendors. And that is, one way that they could start solving this issue. If there's an insurance company that can insure the loss, then you don't really have the concern about somebody not being able to recover. So no big changes in terms of statutes or case law that I've seen, but there are, some steps being taken, at least as far as I can tell. And for the purposes of what I'm saying today, I'm taking, Amazon's word for it. But there are some steps being taken to at least, get at some of these problems.
All right, Derek. Well, that was wonderful. I hope this episode about product liability and consumer safety in e-commerce was informative and educational. And as promised, I have one fun pop-up question for you, Derek. You ready?
I hope so.
If you could play one famous person who would be you in a movie, who would be that person and why?
Oh, man. That's a tough one. I don't want to pick anyone who would be more handsome than me because that would seem to bring. I'm just going to go with Tom Hanks. I think we don't look anything alike. I feel like I'm equally as just kind of, I don't want to say I'm an average person by any means, but Tom Hanks kind of has the everyman appeal. I like to think that I would love to say Daniel Craig or some other, super attractive blonde actor, but I don't think that would show the right kind of self-awareness that I'd like to project. So Tom Hanks, he's good looking enough and seems like a good dude. I would go with that.
Very nice. I love his movies, love his voice, actually. He has a fascinating voice. Absolutely. Derek, again, that was an amazing time with you. Thank you so much for finding time for me. And if anybody needs your professional help or is looking for the DSR Law LLC, how can they find you? Do you have a website, social media resources, email address, phone numbers?
Yeah, I think the best way to get a hold of me is to email me. My email is derek@dsrlawyer.com. DSRlawyer.com is my website. You can search for me on Instagram. I don't post on there all the time. I keep telling myself I'm going to, but it's just if you search for Derek Rajavuori, you'll find my attorney page. But yeah, those are the best ways to get a hold of me. I mean, I certainly can provide my number, but email is a good way for me to, keep track of, who's contacting me and that kind of thing. So. Absolutely.
And you have a beautiful, fascinating last name. Would you spell it for us, please?
Yes, it's Rajavuori, Rajavuori.
I love it.
Yes.
Again, that was Derek Rajavuori with DSR Law LLC, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you all for listening and watching our story today. For more tips and tricks on legal funding and personal injury related topics, follow me, download, like, and subscribe for It's Time for More Injury Funding Podcast.